I started off as a physical education teacher, and my father had always said, I thought you were going to be a doctor. And I said, yeah, that was kid stuff. And he says, no, you said you're going to be a doctor. I said, oh, okay. But started off as a gym teacher, and he kept hounding me, and I said, well, I want to be a dentist. So I went to dental hygiene school first, just to see if I would really like this profession, and ended up really loving dental hygiene. That patient work, and then my father came back and said, you were supposed to be going to dental school. I'm like, oh, okay. So went to dental school. That was enlightening. I graduated in 1988, University of Maryland Dental School. At that time, the African-American students, we got together and we started the first African-American reunion, because we really learned how difficult it was for African-Americans going to school at that, prior to in the 70s and early 80s at the dental school, some of the difficulties that they went through. I graduated, did a residency, but I wanted to come back to Maryland. And I came back to the dental school and volunteered. And how I got into the Plus Clinic and working with HIV patients, I guess I could say it was being at the right place at the right time.
She says she doesn't remember it, but I came to the freshman orientation. I just graduated from Springfield College, and we were walking down to the freshman camp. So it was a group of some of the students that had graduated that still lived up there, and a group of the freshmen. And I had forgotten to wear a coat, and the temperature had dropped like 25 degrees, and I was freezing, and I was like shivering, and I said, oh, boy. And I said something, and people, kind of like laughed and everything. Then I heard a voice in the back, do you want to use my sweater? And it was her. So after that, I used to stop in and say hello to her. And we talked for a little while. And then, we both went separate ways. I was in graduate school, and she was in undergraduate school. Well, I went to Springfield College in 1969. I was a phys ed major first. Then I went to the Art and Urban Life program, which was an interesting program. That's where I began. I was a mural painter, and I started writing poetry. And during that time, I, had some success with the poetry, entered a couple of national competitions, published in 2 of them. In 1972, Pegasus was a famous national poetry anthology. And after that, my art teacher, Bill Blizzard from Springfield College, he set me up to go to UMass Amherst for graduate school. And so a sculptor friend of his took me up there, and I got in. And that's where I began doing murals and painting. When I left there, I got hired as an artist in residence to do work in the New Jersey Arts Council with the Special Arts Program, which was a program that dealt with minorities and women. And I was the project coordinator for 3 years. And that's where I really developed my theater experience.
The director of the clinics had talked to the dean of the dental school at that time and said, we have a cohort of patients in the city that need dental care, and they can't afford it. He also told his father that. And his father said, wow, why don't you see what the mayor can do? And the mayor at that time, Mayor Donald Schaefer, he was able to find some money for the dental school to specifically treat people living with HIV disease. But they needed somebody to, get it going. And everybody, as usual, is too busy doing everything else. And I was just there volunteering. So they asked me, and I said, yeah, sure, okay, I'll do it. And they said, well, you got to borrow operatory space, and, here it is for you. And in those early days, myself and the hygienist that also worked with me, Judy, we went to about every agency in the city. And at that time, there were quite a few agencies in the city that were trying to provide care for people living with HIV disease. And we went to them to tell them we have a clinic for the patients to come to a dental clinic. And it started off, it was just a few patients because people were really afraid. Everybody's afraid to go to the dentist. We all go to the dentist when something hurts. And we're trying to get them to come before you get to that point. So, and then from there, it just really blossomed. Two of my department chairs always had my back. Lots of times I would put my foot in my mouth, but they would gently take it out and let me keep on going, My most recent department chair who retired soon after I retired, his wife told me whenever he would come home, he would go and get a bottle of scotch, and she would always know if I had been in his office because it depended whether he went for the Johnny Walker Red or the Johnny Walker Black, or something, the good scotch or the, everyday scotch. The thing about the Plus Clinic, we were the first continuous, we're still operating. We had something called the Mid-Atlantic Age Education and Training Center. And we had private practitioners and other clinics. They came to the dental school and we were teaching them how to treat people living with HIV disease. So it really did evolve. In fact, I think the Old Dominion Dental Society, I even came down here and and I think that's where Clyde and I first connected. I came down and did a lecture for them, and their president at the time came up to Baltimore and went through the clinic, and we did like a practical for him.
Years later, I saw her name that she had gotten an award. I congratulated her, sent her an email. We all had each other's emails on this big book that we got from Springfield College. After that, basically, she put me on her email with all her other friends, chat back and forth, but, until probably about 2014, 2015, when my wife, Gail, got very sick. Valli said to me, she said, "Oh, I know what it was like. My mother was very sick like that." And she kind of helped me through it a little bit, talked me through it. When my wife had passed, and I kind of just ended up being a phone pal from the beginning. It was during the pandemic. And we just got friendlier, and I asked if I could come up and see her. And first she said, "No, I don't think I want you to do that." And then finally, she said, "Okay, well, you can come up." I came up and had dinner together. And after that, we started just still talking to each other. We started to come together. That was it.
Clyde was always asking me, "Oh, what are you doing?" or talking about the clinic. And like I said, he would find things about me online that I didn't even know was out there. And I never really realized that the more he was talking to me and the more I was talking to him, and I thought I was just talking. I didn't know he was taking this as fodder, I just kept saying, "Oh, this is never going to go anywhere." And I just kept saying that in the back of my head. And he just kept going on and on. Got in touch with Kara and just kept developing. And I kept on saying, "Lord, please, I don't want to this is hard. I don't want to put myself out there." And then Terry came and said, "Yes, we're going to do this right before Pride Month." I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm in it. It's here. It's no turning back now."
I asked Kara if she would, because she was working both the music, she was going to do all the music for me, and she was going to do the co-lyricist. And so I said, "Well, you can also, if you want to work on the script a little bit too, you can work on the script too." And I said, let's make it, since this is Zaida's American Dream Theater, I looked at it as a chance for a young composer, writer, to actually develop. What happened was, Valli had told me about him, and she showed me his obituary. And when I looked at the obituary, and I thought, because I had been a law enforcement officer, I said, well, I can go back and maybe backtrack this stuff. And it backtracked all the way into Pennsylvania in a little Catholic church. We wanted to make sure that we could ask somebody to use his stuff, find out who had control of his stuff. So the secretary of the Catholic church that we called, they said, oh yeah, we can contact his sister. And his sister called me about 45 minutes later, and I told her, I said, I'm working with this Zaida's American Dream. So I said, we're not this rich Broadway theater. We're just a Virginia Beach theater. It's a labor of love. Don't have a whole lot of money, but we want to do a celebration of your brother, Carlton, and Jim, and celebrate the clinic and Valli's relationship to all of your people. And she said, this is 25 years. And I said, well, your brother was the Picasso of the LGBT community. She said, I never heard anybody say that about my brother. I said, if you think about Guernica was about the bombing of the Basque Country. I said, your brother was dealing about the worst situation and people, how they ostracized and just alienated folk who were HIV positive or had AIDS. And I said, he's that Guernica. That's the Guernica. He's the Picasso. She said, I'm going to talk to my other sisters and I'm going to find out, make sure we can get this to go.
It's funny because I'll go with John as the Tin Man because of the heart. And John had a big heart. His heart, for me, was always on his sleeve. Carlton as the lion and courage, because if you think about in the Wizard of God, the lion was just hysterical. But Jim as the scarecrow, I'm going to get emotional about this because Jim is my heart. In The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy gets the opportunity, when she's going to leave Oz and go back home, and she goes to each of them and says goodbye, and she goes up to the scarecrow and says, I'm going to miss you the most. And that's how I feel about Jim. It's just a connection that the two of us had. So I think they would appreciate, those characters and what each one, meant to them. Everyone says it's my story, but it's not my story. It's the angels' stories. It's everybody that's living with HIV disease. It's the LGBTQ plus community's story. I remember just about all the first patients, they already had AIDS. They had already crossed over from being HIV positive to, back then we used to say Frank AIDS. We don't say that anymore. And now, with all the research, with all the advancements, it's not a death sentence, it's a chronic illness. So it's just evolved so much. And I think, in some small way, I definitely didn't do some of the research that a lot of other people did, but I'm glad I was a part of it to see how it's changed.